We're here at the second day of the Road to the Horse Challenge. What do you think of the competition so far?
It's interesting because each person has their own theory of how to do it. You get to sit and watch 3 different ways, and you can kind of work it in with your horse on what your horse needs and on the age of your horse depending on what level that they're at.
What did you think about the competition last night?
Oh, I thought it was exciting. You got to see several different styles. You got to watch what each one of them done. It was really interesting to see the different ways that they worked with the horses, and really enjoyed it.
What do you think of the competition so far?
It's been pretty interesting. Done a lot of different, learned a lot of different things about the way they handle their young colts, how to desensitize them. Seems like it's working out pretty well for all of them so far.
Well, the competition is getting really exciting. Who's winning thus far, do you think?
Clinton.
And why is that?
I think he's come ahead with his horse more than the other 2 boys had.
What do you think of the competition so far?
It's been great so far. Clinton's going to take it.
Clinton's going to take it. Why?
He had his horse desensitized before anybody did. All of his stuff was already in the round pen. Horse is already used to all the obstacles. He's got it.
I think there's no way in the world anybody's going to beat this. It's hands down. Just give him the check, we'll go home.
I love coming to the Road to the Horse. I went to the one in Fort Worth, and I just love the new style of training and the new philosophy in horse training.
Who's your favorite?
Clinton Andерson. He's the best, I think. He communicates to me real good, and I think that's the biggest thing.
As day 1 came to a close and the first hour of round pen training ended, you could tell that all 3 of our trainers wished they had a little bit more time to work with these horses. Craig Cameron's horse was rather disrespectful and lazy to start with, but Craig had made pretty good progress with her and had actually saddled her and stepped into the stirrups. Now, he could not actually mount her. The rules say that the first hour of round pen training you cannot mount the horse. But Craig made good progress, and you could tell he was ready to ride that horse beginning on day 2. Van Hargis, on the other hand, had a very different kind of a horse, one that had a lot of go, a lot of spirit, but not much confidence. Van spent almost the entire first hour of this competition just trying to develop a relationship, develop some confidence, get this horse to trust him enough that he could go in and actually touch her. Most people felt that Van had fallen considerably behind in this competition at the end of hour 1. Clinton, on the other hand, had a horse not dissimilar from Craig's, kind of pushy, kind of disrespectful, not as eager to go. Clinton had to keep encouraging the horse. Interesting thing that Clinton did right from the beginning was make very effective use of his time by filling the round pen full of obstacles that would get the horse's confidence built up and get her thinking about where her feet were while he was using her around the pen, driving her around the pen. Clinton used very effectively the Jeffrey method, and he even talked a little bit about that and did some of his famous human curry comb type desensitizing where he crawled over the horse's back. He was just getting started on the flexing, had one side starting to respond when time ran out, and you could tell he wished he'd had a chance to get the other side done with the flexing. At the end of day 1, ladies and gentlemen, it was still anybody's game. Anything could happen. And as day 2 began, we find Clinton making a rather unusual entrance.
Ladies and gentlemen, Clinton Andерson. All right, look out. Ladies and gentlemen, Clinton Andерson. Clinton Anderson, are you ready to go? Yes, he's ready. Craig Cameron, are you ready to go? Born ready. And Van Hargis, are you ready to go? Timer, are we ready to start the clock?
Timer's ready.
All right. Let Road to the Horse begin.
Yeah. Well, we're here on day 2 now. I'm just getting all my obstacles out again. You know, I was reasonably happy with the first session. I'd like to do a little bit more flexing straight up here this morning and get the horse giving to that halter a lot better. You know, in this next 2-hour session, we've got a lot of things we've got to try and get accomplished. We've got to get the horse soft and supple. We've got to get the saddle on the horse as well. There's quite a few things we've got to do here this morning, so I really want to try and manage the time as best I can.
Just a little reminder here, we have a helper assigned to each of these trainers. They can hand things into them, cannot help them inside the arena other than just handing tools into them and equipment. Cannot offer them advice or suggestions. This is entirely a training job for the man inside the ring. You'll notice that we've shifted the round pins around so you can see a little different view than you saw yesterday. But each man is still with the same horse he started with yesterday. Reminder, they have not had any contact with these horses. Each of these horses was kept in its own stall overnight. Each horse was checked out by a veterinarian to make sure that he was totally sound and ready for this day's competition.
Right, where's the ball? Throw the ball in here. Now this morning I kind of want to repeat what I did from yesterday. I want to get this horse's feet moving, okay, forwards, backwards, left and right. Today I'm just going to change over and put the plastic bag on the end of the stick with the string on as well. That way I can kind of spank her with the end of that string and get that horse's feet to move a little bit better. I was a little bit more concerned today about making sure I could get this horse's feet moving because, you know, when you ride them for the first time, the hardest thing on a young colt usually is getting their feet to move, especially at the canter. And actually myself, when I go to ride a horse for the first time, I never do it by myself. I always have somebody in there with me that gets the horse's feet moving, and it makes it real safe for me and it helps the horse get moved around. However, the rules in this particular competition is you have to ride the horse by yourself. You're not allowed to actually have anybody in there with me. So I really needed to make sure I could get her to walk, trot, and canter in this round pen so that when I got on her, she would go. Now see how she keeps trying to turn into the fence? Establish direction. Remember, get those feet moving. Ideally, I like to have a 50-foot round pen. A 50-foot round pen is about the right size. You can do your groundwork in it, and you can also do your riding in it as well. Any bigger than 50 feet, and you'll end up doing too much running around. Any smaller than 50 feet, it's a little hard to get the horse cantering, whether it's on the ground or under saddle, at least in the beginning when they're green. See how I point, clock, and then spank. Point, clock, and then spank. To eventually, when I point, I want to have that horse follow that feel and immediately move their feet. So that way when I point, when I lunge, the horse really gets those feet moving. There we go. Again, it's not necessarily a matter of getting the horse caught right now. It's a matter of getting those feet freed up and getting them to move somewhere. Anytime that horse sticks that tail in my face and I can see two heels, I want him to feel uncomfortable. Give me the lariat and the lead rope. No, not that one, the other one. Give me the halter and lead too. So I've kind of got this filly faced up right now where she's turning into me and changing direction. She was a little sticky going that one way, how she wanted to keep stopping and changing directions. So now I'm just kind of walking back and forth here. Anytime she walks towards me, I'll kind of retreat and walk away. But instead of just walking directly up to the horse, you want to just kind of walk from side to side. I try not to look them in the eye, and I try and look down at the ground a little bit, just look a little less intimidating. See, I'm just kind of holding my hand up here. I'm just kind of waiting until she keeps her head still. I don't want to I don't want to retreat my hand away when she's taking her face away from me. So when she was taking her face away, I just kind of follow her there. And when she left her head straight in the middle for a split second, that's when I retreated. So now there's my starting point for the day, okay? You always want to establish a new starting point every single day. So that was my first little scratch on her. Before she'd leave me, I want to leave her. I'd like to be able to get a court today without having to rope her again. So, I'm just kind of building on here. And sometimes, you just got to find the spot where you can get up to them there. Most horses that are a little bit frightened, you can get up to their neck a little bit easier than what you can get up to straight up between their eyes, okay? So I just kind of go off what each horse will give me. But as a general rule, I find a starting point there and then kind of build from that point. So my main goal is to approach and retreat a few times, see if I can't get her comfortable with that. And as quickly as I can, I want to get the halter on her. Normally, I'd spend more time in the round pen getting the horse to follow me around, yield their hindquarters, hook up to me. However, again, I've got 2 hours, and I've got to get this horse caught, saddled, pick up their feet, get them ridden, get them over the obstacles. I've got a lot of stuff to do in less than 2 hours here. So I've really got to keep my eye on, what I want to work on and what I don't want to work on here. So I just kind of approach and retreat. But typically, before I try and put this halter on this filly, I try and get her hooked up to me a little bit better, just offline, which means loose.
Clinton, what are your thoughts at this point with this particular horse?
Well, I just thought I'd try and see if I can get up to here and just rub her down a little bit and get the halter on. I'd prefer not to have to rope her to get her caught anyway. But, it's a time event, so, I have no problem with throwing a rope on. But at the same time, I'd rather be able to catch her without throwing it on her. But at the same time, I'm not going to mess around here forever.
What about backsliding? You think there was any backsliding overnight with this horse?
What do you mean by backsliding?
Are you having to back up from where you left her today, or yesterday rather?
Well, yeah, they're a little bit better, and some ways they're a little bit worse. But I feel like it took me less time to get to this point today than yesterday. And I don't like roping them and missing them because I think they just get goofier about it and they get smarter about it. They start ducking their heads and things like that. And I'm the first to admit that most Australians are like me. We couldn't rope the ground if we were standing on the roof of a house. So, it's something that I'm not real good at and I don't pride myself on being. Roping's just not a big part of Australia's culture. A couple hundred years ago, the Yanks came over and showed it to us, and we started roping, but, when we started getting jerked out of the saddle because we had nothing to dally to, we just thought it was a hard way of doing it. So, at that point, we just felt like if we wanted to continue on with the species of human beings in Australia, we had to give up the whole roping thing. But we can crack a whip. We can do that. So right now, I just want to rub her down, build her confidence. Okay, I really want her to get her feet moving today because this mare's got a little bit of pissiness to her. She's got a little bit of up yours in her. She gets a little pinny-eared at times, and I got to get that movement going here before I saddle her and so forth. So I want to get those feet moving, loosen the round pen. That way when I go to ride, I think I'll have a much better chance of having everything work. Rick?
Do you think you'll delay saddling her until the very end as you did before?
What, mate?
Do you think you'll delay? Do you think you'll wait to saddle her until the very last moment like you did before?
No, I'm going to wait a little bit to saddle. I want to get her saddled pretty soon today. I don't never saddle them on that first hour because if you saddle them and they start to buck, and a lot of them do, if I can't stop them bucking by the end of that first hour, I don't want to have to take that saddle off when they're still bronky. Mm-hmm. So that's why I never saddle them in the first hour, because some of them you'll get away with them and some of them you won't. So I want to make sure, okay, I want to make sure that...
Okay, well, we'll let you get back to work there. Thanks for your comments.
Do my job. You know, what I was talking about that saddle there is that when I saddle them in the morning, I saddle them early in the morning, and I leave that saddle on them all day. And I like to saddle them in a 50-foot round pen and then, you know, get that initial buck out of them and so forth. So I'm kind of close to them. But then what I want to do is I want to turn them loose in a big arena and have them walk, trot, and canter around all day and let those feet get moving. The worst thing you can do is saddle a colt and just have them stand still with it, because often during the day as they walk around the arena, they'll pitch a fit every couple of hours and they'll run off and start bucking and carrying on because, they, you know, maybe that back cinch grabs them in a different spot, or maybe the wind blows up their butt and the tail goes between their legs, or, you know, there's lots of different reasons. What I'm saying is I never want to saddle a horse unless I know I've got enough time on my hands that if they don't like the saddle, I don't want to have to take it off until the horse is relaxed. Okay, I don't want to have to take it off until the horse is relaxed. Remember, whatever you do on one side, you must always do it on the other side, okay? So I'm just going to kind of repeat what I did yesterday and make sure the horse is comfortable with it before I put the saddle on. Remember, I never put the saddle on until the horse is comfortable with the person by themselves, okay? And I just found that since adding this step to it, it makes those colts a lot quieter. It's amazing how quiet they get when you rub them all over, okay? Kind of working on her face there a little bit. I keep coming back to that because I want to be able to get that bridle on her again. I'm just checking out her desensitizing around her face. Remember yesterday she was a little bit kind of head shy there and a little bit funny around things around her face there. So I want to make sure that I can move that around. You know, rhythm is very important. You notice how my hand is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rhythm is very, very important because rhythm is what helps the horse you know, think about where the pressure's coming from and whether they should move away from it, whether they should stand still, okay? Rhythm is one of the hardest things for me to teach people. I'm repeating with my tools, my rope, and then I'll get my stick and string out, etc. It's very important that my horse is not frightened of me or any of my tools. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just running over the horse with desensitizing objects to see if there's any particular one that he has a bigger trouble with than some of the others, okay? And whatever I think my horse has the biggest problem with, I'm going to work more on that than what I am some of the others. You know, all of these desensitizing techniques that I'm showing you here in this, it's not just good for 2-year-olds or horses that you're starting to unsaddle. Do it with all of them. You know, your older horses, you know, jumpy horses, any type of horse, especially a lot with your foals and your weanlings and yearlings. See how I'm just rubbing that hand over her ears? I'm just kind of preparing her for that bridle there just a little bit. I just want to make sure I can take that up over her ears and she doesn't have too much of an issue with it here. I'm desensitizing that airspace around the front of her face. you know, you need to back off to a part where the horse will accept it. So if I can't really touch her nose very well, I'm just going to desensitize her to my hand moving around her nose. When she keeps her head still and she relaxes, then I'll retreat it. But I just kind of follow. Wherever her head goes, I follow with it. Okay, and I'm not trying to touch her, I'm just moving it around. And when she finally keeps her head still like that, that's when I retreat. So again, if you can't touch a horse somewhere with a certain object, whether it's your hand, a tool, a stick, a rope, don't worry about touching them. Just desensitize the airspace around them. Remember, use the method called what? Approach and then retreat. But you don't want to retreat until the horse's feet stand still and they relax. This is something I like to do a bunch of. Desensitizing those colts to that stick and string. Make sure you can spank that ground and whack it hard, and make sure those colts will stand there with a nice relaxed look on their face. You cannot overdo this part of it, that's for sure. Remember, it's real important. Whatever you do on one side, you must make sure that you do on the other. It's important to do all three sides, both sides of the horse and in front. Horses see things from different angles, different positions. It's making sure that you're desensitizing that airspace around them. So I like this filly. She's got a leg cocked a lot more today. You know, it took me quite a lot less time to get her to this same point today as what it did yesterday. Each day you work with a horse, if it took me, say, an hour yesterday to get to a certain level, today it should take me, half hour. The next day, 15 minutes. The next day, 2 minutes. Everything should get less every day if you're doing it correctly. I like to do a lot of this with these horses, getting them so where I can move my hands around their face and they're not worried about it. I can't stress that enough, how important that is to move your arms around. A lot of people with head-shy horses, it's almost like they think because they're frightened you need to sneak around them more. That's the opposite of what I do. The more head-shy they are, the more I move around them. Heart attacks are free. Let them have one. Just expose them to it until they keep their head still and they relax, and then rub them, and then do it again. Now, normally I wouldn't stand directly in front of a colt like this until I've done it on each side first. I've already done plenty of this on each side of her, so I'm not worried about her rearing up and striking me. So, it's important not to stand directly in front of them when you first start this, but once you've got their confidence and you're not worried about them, then you can stand in front of them and you're all right. But just don't stand directly in front of them and do this with the wild colt in the very first session. See, when she moves her head, I just follow her. She tries to avoid me by moving her head around, and I just follow her. And I show her the only place that I'm going to stop moving my arms is when she keeps her head still, and I'm pretty much standing in front of her like that. Make that be the release. Stock whip. Want to get my stock whip out again and repeat that again. A lot of these desensitizing tools and exercises, you're going to see me repeat a lot during this session because, again, repetition is the key. Your greatest ally when you train horses is consistency, okay? Your greatest enemy is inconsistency, okay? Repetition is the key. If you want your horse to learn, you've got to do it the same way all the time.
In case you're wondering what's happening here, Craig Cameron is using Clinton to train his horse. That is a smart one.
My mic on.
Fighting fire with fire.
Last night, Craig gets up at 12 o'clock and sneaks into my hotel and copies my cue cards. Look at him. Look, he even did it. 12 o'clock, he copied them. I'd be walking around like this.
Fighting fire with fire.
Fighting fire with fire.
I tell you what, these Texans are cheeky. You got to keep your eyes on them.
Well, you know, these guys are here to win.
That's why they're good at poker. Hey, Craig, do something else for a while, will you? Now, if your horse will stand there and let you crack a stock whip, you'll be amazed how quiet they get with everything else around them. You know, this is about one of the most scariest things for a horse is a stock whip being cracked in the very beginning. This filly handled it pretty well. There's a lot of horses, however, that won't. And it's the same theory. All you do is follow them around, keep cracking it with rhythm until two things happen. Their feet stand still and they relax. You know, a stock whip is real important in Australia, especially for keep people working out in the land, you know, want to go mustering. You need a stock whip to help encourage cattle to move around. And, you know, not a lot of the time you're whacking cattle with it, but, you know, the noise is what generally keeps them moving. You know, sometimes you have to whack them with it to get their feet moving, but as a general rule, the noise of it will keep them moving. So a lot of horses need to be able to be broke enough to where you can swing a stock whip off them and crack it at walk, trot, canter, and gallop. If you're going through the bush, you need to be able to make sure you can crack that thing at full gallop, and your horse is going to be dependable and safe. You'll notice that, you know, sometimes during with the desensitizing, like with her when I was cracking the whip, she was kind of pawing at the ground a little bit and acting a little bit defensive. I just ignore a lot of that stuff. Again, she's just trying to get me to stop moving it, okay? Even when she kind of pins her ears back, like right now she's kind of pins her ears back when I rub her under the chin and that. I just keep doing it until she gives me the right behavior, okay? Do not back off when you're getting the wrong response. Keep doing it until you get the right response. So a lot of those things, I don't really try and punish her or get after her for it. I just kind of act like they're not happening, and in doing that, she'll just kind of give up that resentment on that union card. Give me the bridle with the reins on it. I need to be able to get this bridle on her pretty quick, because after I finish flexing her with the halter and lead rope, I need to start flexing her with the bit as well. Okay, so I want to get this bit back on her as soon as I can, so that I can get her ready for it. Now again, I rub her, she doesn't rub me. See how she's real dominant and pushy there? I just stand my ground, hold my hand up there, and then immediately go back to rubbing her again. I rub her, she doesn't rub me. I don't look like a scratch and post, so I don't want her to treat me like one. The problem with letting them push on you and rub on you like that is they just get more and more dominant as they do it. They just get pushier and pushier and pushier with it until one day they're whacking you upside the head with their head. So that's why it's important. I don't let those things get started, because if you let them get started in the beginning, it's just harder to fix later on. Always loosen that bridle off pretty good in the very beginning, so that, you know, you're not going to have any trouble getting it up over their ears, okay? And if a horse is real bad about it, I'll just practice with my lead rope, taking my lead rope over their head and desensitizing them to that before I'll put that bridle on them there, you know? I usually just stick my thumb in the corner of their mouth. I wait till they open their mouth, and when they open their mouth, I'll pull that bridle up. See how I can pull her head back towards me here a little bit? Okay. Typically, I would like her a lot better around her face before I'd ever put this bridle on at home. If I had her at home, I wouldn't actually be putting this bridle on right now. I'd be spending more time getting her a little bit more desensitized to it, so that there was a little less defensiveness as I brought that bit up to her mouth. In the beginning, a lot of horses will stick their tongue over the bit. I don't worry about any of that. My theory is if they can get their tongue over the bit, they can put it back where it should be. And even when I'm riding, if I'm riding a young colt and they get their tongue over the bit, I just keep riding them. I keep bending them and pulling on them and softening them. And they just figure out that the most comfortable place to keep their tongue is underneath the bit, not over the top of it, okay? You know, a lot of horses get real smart about sticking it over, and every time they do, the rider stops and gets off them and fixes it, and it just goes on and on and on, okay? I just find that any horse that does it, if I just ignore it and keep going, they get over it pretty quickly. I don't want that bridle so tight that it's creating like 3 wrinkles in their mouth. I want to have that bit where it's just there in the corner of their mouth. It's not really hanging out of their mouth, but it's not really causing a wrinkle either. The reason why I don't like 3 wrinkles in their mouth, and that's kind of traditionally what most people do, is that when you've got wrinkles in their mouth and the reins are loose, it means that that bridle's pulling on them all the time. Well, if anybody's going to pull on their horse, I want it to be me, okay? I don't want the bridle pulling on them. I want to be able to either pull on it or release that pressure. So what I'm doing right here now is I'm just yielding that hindquarters and leading her out and then rubbing her with that stick. I'm just trying to get those feet loosened up. Remember, all the power comes from the horse's hindquarters, okay? If you can't get that hindquarters loosened up and get that hind end to step across, it's easy for him to kick you, it's easy for him to rear up. A horse can't really do anything when their hind legs cross. Because when you cross those hind legs, it's like you push in the clutch, you take away their power. A horse is relatively easy to unbalance. If you can unbalance them by pulling laterally, horses don't have anywhere near the strength that they normally would. However, when a horse is standing, kind of flat-footed and then with their feet spread apart, it's much easier for them to rear up, jump in the air, run off, buck, whatever they want to do. That's why the lateral flexion and the one-rein stops is so good for a safety exercise when you're riding them, because see how that right hind leg steps across? Every time that right hind leg steps across their other hind leg, basically they're unbalanced. They're not in a position to run, buck, or bolt. By lifting my hand up in the air, it does a couple of things. It stops her from pushing on top of me. Remember yesterday she was real pushy on this side, and she's still a little pushy here, so I've got my hand up in the air saying, hey, do not run into me. But the more I lift her head up in the air, it does 2 things. It bends her head and neck a little bit, and which helps her yield that hindquarters away from me. The more you've got the head tipped towards you, the more easier it is to get that hindquarters to move away. But just because I tip her head towards me doesn't mean I want her to walk towards me with her front end, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to get a little pushy there. So she's still kind of breathing a little heavy for what I'd like, so that's why I'm continuing to do more desensitizing. Again, you've got to be careful in this event that if you get them too tired, a lot of young colts, especially the lazy ones like her, they'll sull up on you, okay, or seize up on you. What I'm trying to say is they mentally and physically just say, I've had enough today, I'm done. And you really don't want that to happen. Even if it wasn't a timed event, you don't want that to happen, but especially in a timed event like this. So if you push them too hard, they seize up on you. If you don't work with their feet enough, then they're fresh and they're goofy and they might want to buck you off, okay? So it's kind of a very touchy situation. You don't want them fresh, but you don't want them exhausted either. So every time I notice that she's starting to huff and puff and breathe, I want to give her a chance to relax there and just get over it and get her breath back again. So now I'm kind of working on my freestyle activity. I'm just going to desensitize her. I took the chain off this chainsaw here, and I just want to desensitize her to the noise of this chainsaw, okay? It's very important to desensitize your horse to objects that move and make a noise. See how when she stood still and she relaxed, I retreated and took it away. The more you walk away from an animal with something that's frightening them, the more confident they get. Remember that. Plastic bags, cattle, cars, anything your horse is frightened of, have it go away from your horse and have the horse follow it. Anytime they keep those feet still and they relax, retreat. So I've already got it planned, what I want to do for the freestyle. I want to be able to, ride her around with a chainsaw. I want to be able to crack a stock whip on her. I want to be able to shoot some guns off her. So I need to start preparing for that now. It's not like when the freestyle comes, you just think of something stupid to do and just try it, because that's how you get yourself killed. Preparation is the key. When you're prepared, you'll succeed. When you're unprepared, you'll fail. It's just that simple. Another good thing that I like to desensitize them to is a leaf blower. Remember, the more the horse moves their feet around, you just follow them and you wait till they keep their feet still and they relax. Do not take that pressure away until those feet stop, because if you do, you're actually sensitizing them, not desensitizing. Make her think that every time she stands still and relaxes, you'll take away that scary object. Because that's all she wants anyway. Horses just dream about us not putting pressure on them. So teach her that if the quickest way to get rid of something she doesn't like is to stand still. Where Mother Nature says, when you don't like something, run. Don't stand still. That'll get you killed. Run first. Flight. I like to do a lot of that, walking away from them, having them follow me. It just really builds that confidence. That's better. She's doing better with it now. Horses are frightened of objects, especially objects that move and make a noise. Now, anything that lives in your horse's stall or pasture, they don't class that as an object. Why not? Because they spend so much time around it, they become familiar with it. So unless the whole world's your horse's backyard or stall, there's a lot of things in the world that your horse is going to be frightened of. The more things you can expose your horse to, the less frightened they'll be. See how I'm trying to keep my hand up in the air like that to stop her from, one, pushing on top of me, and two, changing sides. If they want to move their feet, let them. Just keep two eyes tipped towards you. See how she's backing up? I just follow her in position. Wherever she goes, I go. I can outrun any horse in the world that's looking at me with two eyes. As long as she's looking at me with two eyes, I can outrun her. There, I like that. She's starting to cock that hind leg. That's a lot better sign of relaxing. She's still not as relaxed about me reaching up to her face with my hand. I want to get a lot better with that, and that'll just take a little time. So she's getting used to the bridle as well as all these other tools at the same time. So that's what I talk about. You know, in this event, you've got to be multitasking, okay? You've got to be able to do several things at once. A lot of horses don't like things blowing up between their legs, especially when you saddle some real bronky colts on a windy day. They'll stand there with the saddle pretty good, and then 2 minutes later the wind will blow up their butt and their tail will go up between their legs and the flank girth will hit them, and they'll go into a buck and fit around the place. In Australia, a lot of places where I live were real windy, so, you know, I used to really hate saddling colts actually on windy days because you just ask and, well, it's just a little bit harder in the fact that they want to get a little more spookier, they want to get a little bit more worried about it, okay? But one thing's for sure, once you get them over all that jumpiness, you won't have a problem with them being like that on a windy day. Oh, she's so clever. I'm going to do some lunging now, yeah. So now I've desensitized her pretty good, so now I've got to come back and sensitize her. So I'm just going to work on lunging for respect stage 1, getting her to move that front end away and then go around me in a circle. Remember, it's important that you just keep with that pressure until they find the answer. I can't make her move away, but I can make her feel uncomfortable for not moving. So this is the first time I'm really trying to get control of the feet with the halter and lead rope. That's why I like to do the round pen stuff first, because by getting her feet to move in the round pen without the halter and lead rope, when you come to this part, it makes it a lot easier. See how I point? And I just keep tapping her on the neck there with rhythm, there, until she moves. You notice that as soon as her feet move, I take the pressure away. Front end for direction, back end for impulsion. So when I want them to leave, I want to direct my energy towards their head and neck. Once they're facing the right direction, then I want to get behind the drive line, which is basically, you know, where the girth would be with the saddle, and drive her forward. Yield her hindquarters and have her disengage and face me. Lots of that, rubbing her face with that stick. See how she moved that front end and I quit for just a second? Now she's pushing again, so I keep doing it. Again, I can't make her leave, I just make her feel uncomfortable for not leaving. That's it. Lunging for respect stage 1 is all about driving the horse out of your hula hoop and then yielding that hindquarters like that, and then bringing them back to you again. But notice I don't let her come all the way up to me, not in the very beginning anyway. I want them to stay on the outside of that circle so that they learn to respect my personal space. I never invite a horse into my personal space unless I know I can get them to move out of it. So this is very important. Remember, it's called lunging for respect. It's not called lunging to get them tired. It's not called lunging to get the buck out of them. And I never want to saddle a colt until I've got all this done to them. For example, a lot of people will just get a colt and get it caught and then get the saddle on as quick as they can. I do not like to do that for several reasons. I don't want to saddle a colt until I've got pretty decent control of their feet for several reasons. Number one, the better control I have of the colt's feet, the less trouble I'm going to have getting the saddle on. If the horse jumps away from me or when I do the girth up, he gets a little squirrely. If he knows how to move his feet and follow my leadership skills, I'm going to be able to get out of that problem a lot quicker. And number two, if he does start bucking, and let's say the saddle slips underneath the horse's belly or there was a problem or something happened, I want to be able to get that horse to stop. But if you just saddle him up before you do any of this groundwork, if they go to bucking or they go have to try and jump a fence or do something stupid, you may not be able to get them to stop using the reacting side of their brain. So that's why I don't like to saddle them until I've got pretty decent control of their feet. So I'm just pointing, sending her away. That was a little better. It's about driving them away and bringing them back. You notice that I don't lunge her around and around and around and around. It's not about, making the horse go around in 1,500 circles. Just go around 2 or 3 circles and stop them again. It's the start and stop part that teaches them, not really the circle part, okay? Move that front end away. Move that front end away. See how I let that rope slide through my hand? That's why I like to use those lead ropes of mine. They're 14 feet long. And those rope halters that I have a lot stiffer feeling rope. The stiffer that rope, the less those horses want to lean on it, especially the 2 knots on the noseband. Point, There. That time I liked that a lot better. When I pointed and said, you better get going, she took my suggestion. I always point and twirl 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and if they don't move, then on number 4, I tap them with the stick with rhythm until they move away. You know, the hula hoop, remember, is if I stood still and I had the stick in my hand, if I just stuck my arm out straight and I drew a circle around me in the dirt with that stick, that is my defined space. So I do not want a horse coming into that unless I invite them in. Think about all the times that people get injured with horses. My horse bites me, kicks me, runs over me, jumps on top of me, plows me down. It's because that horse is coming inside of that 4-foot area. A horse can't bite you if his lips are 4 feet away. He can't kick you if as close as his hind leg gets is 4 feet away. He can't run over you if that's as close as his chest gets. None of those things can happen to you if you can keep the horse out of that space. And people think that's just important for pushy horses. It's equally important for fearful horses because have you ever noticed when you're leading a fearful horse or a spooky horse, if something scares them, what do? They jump on top of you. They try and get in your top pocket because they're trying to look for you for security. A lot of people have been injured with very spooky horses being run over. So I don't care if they're spooky or disrespectful. I do not want them in that circle until I've got some control of their feet. Remember, it's safety for me first, then the horse. I'm first, then the horse. I don't want to get hurt myself, but at the same time, I don't want my horse to get hurt. But if I had to choose, it's me first. I need to protect myself first. So that's why I'm real picky about making sure that I don't let them in that hula hoop until I feel that they're respectful. Now remember, after every single desensitizing exercise, it's always important to come back and desensitize them, okay? So every time you sensitize them, moving their feet, you come back and desensitize them, and that's what I'm doing now. I moved her feet around, see how she's huffing and puffing a little bit? The problem with this type of an event, especially with these type of horses, is they're not very fit. So I suppose what I'm trying to say, they're not in real good shape. So it doesn't take them very much to be huffing and puffing and out of shape. That's why I kind of like those wilder horses and those rangier bred colts a little bit better because they're a little bit hardier and they usually have a little bit more stamina and fitness to them. It's usually like the fatter they are and the quieter they are, the quicker they run out of steam. I'm going to flex it. Okay. Every time I'm desensitizing, I know it seems boring, but we go over the same tools again. Rope, stick and string, stock whip. Rope, stick and string, stock whip. And I'll get the chainsaw out, my guns, my leaf blower. I'm constantly reinforcing that to my horse because by the time I get to the freestyle, I want to have all my homework done so it's not a big surprise to the horse. That's what people say, well, Clinton, how did you stand on their back? That's amazing. Well, it's not really amazing because I've prepared for it. I've been building up for that. I've taught the horse to tolerate me doing those type of things, okay? So even if your horse stands there, I'm still going to check it out anyway, still going to make sure. Now I need to come back and do some more flexing here. I started this yesterday and didn't get it great. It was all right, but not very good. I started on the left side. I didn't really get a chance to do it much on the right side. So again, before I saddle them, I want to make sure that I can really bend that horse's head and neck because when I saddle them, I make sure their head and neck's bent towards me. Maybe not all around to their belly, of course, but probably about that angle right there, somewhere between, straight ahead and 45 degrees. Because again, when you reach under, pick up that back cinch, if you don't have their head tipped towards you and as you reach under their belly, you pick up that back cinch, if they get a little goofy or cinchy and they go to buck or kick out, I guarantee they're going to jump away from you and kick out with both hind legs and then kick you in the head and kill you in a heartbeat, okay? I've seen it happen before where people got kicked and seriously hurt saddling colts for the first time. So it's real important to get that head bent towards you. Now this side, she's never had it done before. See how she's trying to push into the pressure? Notice my releases. Every time I get a release where I see some slack in that rope, I release it. Now even though when she's too strong for me there, I still keep the pressure there. I do not let it go. Even if the horse is stronger than you, I haven't lost yet because I haven't released the rope. Just keep that pressure there. See how I released it quickly? As soon as she started to bring that head around, I released it. Horses don't learn from the pressure. They learn from the release of the pressure. All pressure does is motivate them to try something else. There it is again. It's feel, timing, and experience. And Gordon McKinley used to tell me a lot of that. Feel, timing, and experience. The only way you get feel and timing is through experience. Feel is how much do I pull? Do I pull a little bit or do I pull a lot? Or do I press a little bit or do I spur real hard with my leg? That's feel. Sometimes you need to be real gentle and sometimes you need to be more firm, okay? Timing. Timing is when do I release? Do I release now when she's leaning on the halter? Or do I release when she gives, like right there? That's timing. Do I take my leg off when she moves her feet or do I take my leg off when she's ignoring me, okay? It's timing. The only way you develop good feel and timing is through what? Experience. The more you practice, the more you learn, the more you study, the better your field time and experience will get. Okay, that's one thing that I feel very lucky of. Years ago when I used to be a horse trainer, okay, and I worked for Gordon and Ian and then started my own business, I had a lot of experience starting colts. And that's where I feel like probably I have the edge over most people that do what I do for a living, is most people that teach, have, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them never actually trained horses for a living. Okay, they usually start kind of training people for a living. And that's where one thing that I feel like I have the advantage on a lot of people is that I'm not very old, but I do have a lot of experience where I've handled a lot of horses and done a lot of training, so that I know if somebody brings a horse to a clinic, doesn't matter how good or how bad it is, I feel like I have the knowledge and the experience to deal with that horse and help that owner with it. And that's where this event, I love this event because for about 7 years, that's all I did was start colts every day. I started about 8 colts every single day. Now, I usually keep them from anywhere from 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and then you get a new group of 8 in. And that's all I did. And most of these colts came from graziers. That's another word for ranchers in Australia, okay? And these graziers, none of them would handle them. They'd be 4 and 5 year old, and they'd be snorty and hawky, and they'd jump off a cattle truck into your round pen and stuff like that. So, I got a lot of experience dealing with wilder type horses. Let me tell you, anybody can get a colt broke that comes to them with a blanket on them and a rug and a pair of shoes on them and gets let off a horse trailer. You get something with a little bit of snort to them, and you get yourself a wild horse that'll easily jump out of a 6-foot-high round pen. You better use your head if you want to get along with them, because you can't force those horses and you can't make them do it. You got to get inside their head and make it think it's their idea. See how now she's going through that resistance stage? Remember, they'll do things good for a while, and then they'll kind of be heavy for a while, and they'll go back and forth. And you just kind of go through those resistance patches and wait till you come out to the good ones. There. Each time I ask her, I'm going to wait till she brings her head around just a little bit more. So eventually her nose will touch her belly. But I can't get her to do that initially. Okay, I just wait till the head comes back a little bit more, and then I do it again and again and again. But eventually I'm looking for her to drop that nose more in towards where her girth would be. And just in little increments. And again, some horses that have been stiff for a long time, you may not get this accomplished in this first day or even 2 days. Just build on it each day, get a little bit more. But most horses, I can get them to touch their nose on their belly in one session pretty easily. Now I'm starting with my guns here. I want to desensitize her to these guns. They're just shooting blanks. But it makes sure that your horse is used to things moving around him. Okay, so if I've already done my homework with the stock whip, the guns shouldn't be that big of a problem, because a stock whip and a gun going off really kind of sound very similar, don't they? It's a loud, piercing kind of a sound, okay? It's not loud enough that it's going to hurt the horse's ears or anything like that, but it gets them used to that. Hey, Rick, turn the mic on. I said, turn the mic on.
Let's turn on Clinton's mic.
You know what those guns are for? To keep these Texans in line. That's what it's for. If I catch those Texans cheating again, they're getting it.
Little self-defense from the Aussie here.
Yeah, I tell you what, the Aussies get a little pissed when cheating's going on, let me tell you.
Hey, I got a cord of wood back home needs cutting.
You wait 2 seconds, he'll have a shotgun out there, I guarantee it, okay? He's always got to do something bigger and better in Texas. You wait and see.
Let's turn up Craig's mic.
Back in Texas, we only need one pistol.
Touche.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's a pea shooter. And I'm just preparing her around the belly here, making sure she's comfortable with that rope. Let's get the saddle. Saddle, 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 saddle. Yeah. Turn it on top. So now we're getting ready to saddle her here. I've desensitized the belly to that rope again. And so I feel like I can flex ahead, I feel like I can lunge her, I can yield her hindquarters, so now we're ready to saddle her, okay? Always take your equipment out to the center of the arena. Don't do this beside a fence where if the horse started bucking, they might jam you up against the fence or jump over the fence themselves or get their leg caught through it. Notice how I'm approaching and retreating. When it comes to the saddle pad, by this stage, I should have already done quite a bit of desensitizing anyway, so the saddle pad shouldn't really be a big issue. You notice how I just kind of throw it on and off with rhythm. I move it all over the horse. I just kind of act like there's some 10-year-old broke kid's pony. You know, don't act like they should be frightened of it. Don't act sneaky around them. Move it all over them, up their neck, down their hindquarters. I'm constantly reinforcing that flexing. Remember, the more you flex these colts, the safer they get and the quicker it works, okay? Flexing a horse's head is like something that's one of the easiest things in the world to do to a horse, but it's one of the things that is done the least. You cannot flex a horse too much. The more you flex them, the softer they get, the more humble they get, and the more they listen to you. It's just that simple. You cannot do too much of it here. Okay? Usually I have that rope just sitting over my arm like that so that when I need it, I can grab it pretty quickly. Okay? Most of the time, I just let the end of the lead rope drag on the ground. It doesn't get wrapped around their legs, and even does a little bit. It's no big deal. I usually always like to saddle these colts from the offside. That way I can let down the back cinch and the front cinch and it doesn't scare the horse. If you saddle them from the other side and you let all that flop over, and when it flops over the other side, the horse might jump forward or maybe jump on towards you. So I just kind of start moving it around a little bit and then I just kind of lift it up on there. You know, this filly kind of has a real mutton withers to her. She doesn't have a lot of shape to her withers, so this saddle kind of sits up a little higher, especially this saddle's kind of new and a new saddle pad. It sits up a little bit more on her than what I typically would like. But it's important that, see, when I put the saddle on, I try not to have it so I have to change sides too many times because then every time you let go of that saddle, you're in a position where if she went to buck or something, when I walk around the front of her, that saddle could easily fall off or slip off if she jumped forward. When the saddle slips off the horse, then they get a little spooky about it and they start looking back at it, things like that, okay? So as a general rule, I try not to have to walk back and forth 10 different times, okay? Sometimes you might have to if the girth's not quite the right length and so forth. You know what I mean? Here I'm just pulling it up and then releasing it. Pulling it up and releasing it. Now, I've realized here that I haven't quite let out enough on this side, so I'm going to have to release it here. But ideally, I don't want to have to do exactly what I'm doing now. I want to have enough length in that girth so that when I change sides, I've let go of the saddle once, and now I've got a hold of it again. If a saddle is going to come off a horse, I'd rather pull it off myself and have it fall off. Okay. See how I've got that filly's head tipped towards me there? Again, I can't stress the importance of that enough. I'm in the center of the round pen, so if she went to bucking or do anything stupid, I'm not going to get, she's not going to run over me preferably because she's not forced to go near me. She can go anywhere she wants in the round pen. She's not going to try and jump the fence right now, get a leg caught through it. So always get off the fence. Don't put yourself in a vulnerable position. And then I reach under their belly a little bit there and pick up that back cinch. So you see this filly's kind of bucking now? That's all right, just let her go through it. Now you see, here's a good example of what I'm talking about making sure you got some handle. See how that saddle's loosened up here? So I need to be able to tighten it up here before I get into a wreck.
Well,
Rick, the best advice I could tell somebody when that happens is get your wife drunk and make her ride it. You see how when I back away, I'm always keeping my eyes on those colts, because a lot of colts, when they buck, they'll buck towards you.
And there she goes.
Go on, you get that bad saddle. Get on, get it. See, that's why I like to have a little handle on them before I saddle them, because, see that, she sucked that belly up pretty good, and that saddle kind of half came loose, didn't it? Well, if I wouldn't have taught her lunging for respect first, I may not have been able to get her to stop bucking and stand there long enough so I could tighten that girth up, and if that saddle would have slipped under her belly, it would have been a big wreck. And that's why I don't saddle them until I've got some decent control of their feet, for that very reason that just happened then. Okay. But the first time I saddle them, they can buck as much as they want. The first one's free. After that, I don't let them get in the habit of it.
So that doesn't bother you when they buck on the first time?
Oh, hell yeah, it scares the crap out of me. I'm feeling a little moist back there right now, to be honest with you. Now I'm just working on my lunging for respect, getting those feet to move away, yield, and come back to me. Okay? I've got to get those feet moving around, got to get control of them here with the saddle on. One of the hardest things with colts is when you saddle them, a lot of the time they want to get sticky with their feet because they feel a little trapped there, and they don't want to move those feet out here. And that's kind of what's happening to her just a little bit here. I need to yield that hindquarter. See how she doesn't want to step across? She wants to keep going around me. So see how I just run in there and pull her off balance? Okay? Anytime I feel like they're just dragging me around and not really paying attention, I'll run into the hip and really pull them off balance.
Say, Clinton?
Yeah, mate?
Craig stole your cheat sheet. Did you get his Geritol? Sorry, Craig. Clinton just kept poking fun at that. I just couldn't. I got more respect for you than that.
I couldn't hear you, mate. I was too busy getting drug all over the place.
Yeah, I got Geritol, but I noticed y'all already got Viagra.
I'm trying to work a little bit on lunging for respect stage 2 now. I'm trying to get that front end to move away. This filly's such a pushy thing with her head, neck, and shoulder. But what I'm trying to do right now is just get that head, neck, and shoulder moved away here. Okay, that's what I'm working on now. And she's not really quite ready for it, but I want her to get a little bit better control of that head, neck, and shoulder. She's just so pushy and dominant. The more you can get that front end to move away from you, the better. Anytime she runs past me, I just kind of pull her off balance there. See how she's kind of pushy there? She just wants to come towards you. Move away. You got to have that horse respect that space. Remember, do what you have to do to get the job done. Do it as easy as possible, but as firm as necessary. So if I just have to tap the air gently, that's great. Or if I have to whack her really hard, I'll do whatever it takes to get the job done. Do it as easy as possible, but as firm as necessary. See how I just step into her hindquarters there and kind of pull her off balance a little bit. Anytime I feel like she's just walking past me, I just step in there and yield that hindquarters. There. A few times I had to kind of whack her on the end of the nose a little bit to get her to move away. Now this filly's just kind of now starting to sull up on me a little bit, so I need a place to quit her here pretty quickly because she's kind of getting a little tired here. See her sulling up on me just a little bit here. So I realize that she's still a little bit pushy and I'd like to get her better, but at the same time, I don't want to keep pushing her to where she just shuts down completely on me. And you can start to see it coming a little bit now. So I'm going to start looking for a place to quit here soon. Even if she walks and relaxes, that's all right as long as she doesn't push on me. See right there, I tapped her on the end of the nose. I said, get away from me, you pushy thing. Step in front of the drive line. That was a little better. When I shook the stick towards the head that time, she decided to move away from it. Move away from that. Don't push on me. Just like horses will pin their ears. If the other horse doesn't move, what do? They bite. If the other horse still doesn't move, they kick. If they still don't move, they keep kicking with rhythm until the other horse moves their feet. Remember, whoever moves first loses. See how I backed up and I just used the fence there to help me? Okay? Use that fence there. I need to pull her off balance a little bit there. I'm just going to go into here to her hindquarters and move that a little bit, then start off again. Right now I need to use my string because she's just really kind of snubbing me at this point.
Clinton's got a pretty disrespectful horse here. He's having to turn up the heat pretty hot.
She's pushy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a hard combination. You might just say, well, you know, why don't you just whack her harder? The thing about this filly is you've got to be firm with her, but if you push her too much, and I just felt a little bit of that happening right then, you get in a fight with her, she'll really retaliate and it'll get uglier. So I need to push her to a point where I feel like I've got her to move. She's very dominant with her front end, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to get her to move that front end away, but then I felt like I was getting to a point where she's starting to get out of air, and when she runs out of air, she's kind of lazy. So when she gets hot and tired, she just shuts down on you, and I could feel that happening, so I want to quit before she quits me. Does that make sense? So, yeah, a couple of times I had to knock her on the end of the nose a couple of times to let her understand that that stick there is not a Christmas decoration, so it's not waving around for the practice. Okay, I'm trying to actually get her to move away. So it's very important now, but I spend some time with her getting her to just get her air back, you know. So now I'm going to desensitize her for a while, and then later on I'll do some more sensitizing. So it's sensitizing, desensitizing, sensitizing, desensitizing. Okay, I can't just keep pushing them because these young horses, when you get them out of air, they shut down on you, and you don't want that to happen. Sometimes she wants to run over me, and sometimes she wants to kick me. She's kind of versatile. That's a trademark of the quarter horse, versatility. You know what I say, and inside of every Arab's a quarter horse waiting to get out. Doing a lot of that flapping with the stirrups is very, very important. You know, I do a lot of this before I ever get on them. You can't train one when they're out of air. When she's huffing and puffing and she's tired, you just got to shut down. I'm not going to sit here and read a book and waste this valuable time. I'm going to be desensitizing her and teaching her something as she's getting her air back. These 2-year-olds, especially this filly, she's got a little bit of extra fat on her. So I suspect she's been hanging around the feeder quite a bit more than the rest of them. So I would say she'd tire just a little bit quicker than some of the other colts, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but you just want to quit before they quit you. Okay? That's a girl. I got to practice here. Every time I change sides, I want to start getting her there. That's better. That's quite a big deal for her just to step away from me like that, because, you know, she's Mrs. Pushy, and I need to get her to where she'll step that front end away.
And Clinton goes back to flexing.
Always flex in between each sensitizing exercise. Just before you desensitize, flex them. Make sure we get that nose soft, because pretty soon I want to do it with the bridle, but I can't do it with the bridle until I got this halter established pretty good with her here. My biggest problem with her is being able to get her to move, but not push her so much that she gets real retaliating. But, you know, we'll see what happens. The reason why I like to flap those stirrups so much is that's where my legs are going to be. You know, my legs are going to be flapping up and down, moving around. I want to make sure that she's not frightened of that, especially that leather. Leather slapping on leather kind of makes a loud, scary noise. It's not hurting her, but it makes a loud noise. I love to get them desensitized to all that noise. Again, I'm preparing her for that when I get on, when my leg goes over the other side, it's not a new experience. If it touches her, it doesn't bother her. See how I'm just tapping with rhythm there until she steps across and then rub it away. It doesn't matter how hard you whack them. If you always rub it away, it never really happened, okay? And that's what stops them from getting worried about it. So I'm going to do my back cinch up a little bit more here. I like to have that back cinch on those colts, not necessarily tight, but where they can certainly feel it. If it's hanging down too loose, two things. If it's real loose, it's dangerous. If they kick it a fly, they can get their hind leg caught through it. And not only that, if it's loose and they move around and then all of a sudden that back cinch jumps up and catches them, that's when they'll go to bucking. So I like to keep that back cinch where it's on their belly and they can feel it all the time, and I just find that that helps them get over it much better. I like how she's starting to cock a leg now when I'm starting to crack this whip again here. She's starting to cock a leg again, okay? Again, I've sensitized her. She's a little bit hot now and she's huffing and puffing. So now while she's getting her air back, you do not waste this time, okay? You do not waste this time. You go back and you desensitize them and you get them comfortable with it. Let's get those guns. Let's get those guns. Yeah, let's get the guns. See a jump just there right then? So it's important to keep firing that gun. Good job. I'm going to do that. So while she's resting now, I'm just going to go start working with the legs a little bit here, okay? I can't do any more sensitizing with it because she's hot and sweaty and tired. So right now would be a good opportunity. You know, part of the rules is you had to pick up all 4 feet. So instead of me trying to pick them up right now, I'm just going to start working on desensitizing them. So you see how in the beginning I wrapped my hand around the lead rope around the leg and I just moved it up back and forth, and now I'm running my hands down. See how she's picking a foot up there and she's kind of getting defensive about it? Again, don't try and pick the foot up. Don't even think about picking a horse's foot up until they're really nice and relaxed about you rubbing it there. Okay, see how she's defensive there? When she relaxes, notice I go up high. Then I go down low, then I go up high. Then down low, up high. Again, it's approach and retreat. Approach. See, usually the further you go down the horse's leg towards the ground, the touchier they are. If you stay up higher, they're usually not as sensitive there. Now, see how I'm kind of in a little bit of a vulnerable position. I don't normally like to do what I'm doing here, handling their legs when I first put that saddle on, because when I'm leaning down like that, if that back cinch would touch her on the belly or the wind would blow up a butt and she went to bucking, you know, I'm kind of in a vulnerable position. She could run over me pretty quickly. So on this event, I did it, but typically speaking, if I had a colt to break in, even a wild one, I wouldn't worry about handling their legs for at least, 4 or 5 days. Just get the rest of their body real good first, okay? And especially when I do go and handle their legs, I'm not going to do it with the saddle on, just so that in case the stirrup moved or, the flank girth touched them in a certain area, they're not going to buck on top of me. You see what I'm doing here? Instead of sticking my own head down there, I just flick that rope up and let it go between the back legs, and then I drug it over with my foot, and now I'm just going to move that rope around a leg here. I'm all about safety for me first. I don't want to touch her leg until I know that she's not going to try and kick my head off. So by using the rope here, I'm just moving it up and down. Notice how much I've got a head tip towards me? Again, tipping that head towards you keeps you out of trouble there, okay? Notice how I've got a head bent again with my left hand and I'm rubbing it down with my right hand. I'm trying to stay as far forward as I can so that if she went to kick out, she'd have a lot less chance of getting me, okay? Now I'm going to start getting a little bit more serious about rubbing a leg here. So usually I put the rope in the other hand now, and I can just follow her around here if she moves. I need to get the end of a lead rope out from underneath the foot here. okay, and start rubbing her here. Rub, but keep that head bent. Not only bending that head keeps you safer, but it also transferred some of that weight to her outside hind leg. So most of her weight will be on her. You can see her now how she's got a leg cock there. When you bend the head to the left, the weight will go to the right hind leg, okay, and vice versa the other way. So it's a little bit easier for me to rub them down with that hand. There, I always finish off with flexing. Do you notice that in between each sensitizing exercise and after each desensitizing exercise, I always go back and flex them. I'm like a flexing freak. I love to flex them because I know it keeps my horses soft, supple, and it keeps me safer. Now, what am I jumping up and down here for? I'm just preparing her for when I'm going to jump up in that saddle, okay? A lot of colts, when you first put your foot in that stirrup and you go to jump up in that saddle, it's a new sensation, it's a new feeling for them. So I want to make sure they're used to seeing me jump up and down in the saddle and they're not worried about that, okay? You'll notice that a lot of the times now when I change sides, I always try and get the horse to move now rather than me moving. I point up high with my halter and lead rope and then get my other hand and tap the air with rhythm and try and get her to step across. Every time I can get this mare to step away from me, I'm building her respect. Every time I move around her, she's pushing me out of the road. So I'm going to try my very best to see if I can't get her to move more than what I'm moving. Now this leg here, I felt like she was getting a little bit quieter, so I didn't need to throw the rope between her hind legs there, okay? But don't be frightened to do that. Just flick it up, drag it back with your foot, and seesaw it back and forth. If your horse moves around a bunch when you're rubbing their legs down, what do? Just keep doing it. You just keep following them until what happens? First thing that's got to happen is what? Their feet have got to what? Stand still. What's the next thing they got to do? Relax. I don't care if they spin in a circle, they walk backwards, they run sideways. Again, as long as their head tips towards you, you're completely safe. Okay, you can outrun any horse in the world that's looking at you. See, she's pushing into me there? Okay, get Mrs. Palmer up there and whack her on the jaw. Do whatever it takes to get the job done. It's funny, people, get worried about hurting the horse or doing something to the horse. Even if I kicked this horse in the belly as hard as I could with my own leg, or with my open palm of my hand, I whacked her on her jaw as hard as I possibly can. How much do you think that's going to do to her compared to another horse biting her or another horse kicking her at both hind legs? If we got kicked in the ribs with both hind legs, okay, we'd be in hospital for a week. Okay, so when horses kick each other, it really doesn't do that much damage, especially when they get kicked on muscle. If they get kicked on their knee or their cannon bone or their hock, it might do more damage, okay? But people have got to understand it's not the same degree of pressure as if it was done to another human being, okay? So keep that in mind. Do what you have to do to get the job done. I want to be very gentle with my horses, but there's no point being gentle if they're running over the top of you and laughing at you, okay? You got to get respect without fear. See how I'm changing sides here? Notice that. Every time we change sides, I may not do it every single time, but as a general rule, I'm always going to ask her to move first. I'm playing with the tail a lot because part of my freestyle is I want to be able to pull on a tail and lean behind her and do some things like that. So I just want to make sure she's comfortable with that tail moving. Not only that, working with a horse's tail is just good anyway because it just gets them. A lot of horses are real touchy around their tail. So if you get them loosened up around the tail there and they're not worried about you, you'll be surprised how much quieter they get in general. See how I'm just getting closer and closer? But again, look how much I got a head bent there. Anytime I'm on one side of the horse's body, I've always got their head bent. Look at it like this. The straighter your horse is from their nose to their tail, the more they practice in stiffness. The more you bend them from their nose to their tail, the more you practice in softness. It's that simple, really. Even if she went to kick me and her head's bent, she's going to be pretty unbalanced, so she's not going to be able to kick me very well. Get me the chainsaw again real quick. I've got to go back to my chainsaw, my leaf blower here, and make sure she's nice and relaxed with it, okay? You've always got to keep coming back to it. Now here I've just got a kangaroo hide here. A lot of horses are frightened of animal hides. If you go packing up in the mountains hunting for deer and things and you might need to put a deer over your horse's back or something, you'd be amazed how horses get freaked out about dead animals hanging over them. So I want to make sure that my horse is comfortable with animal skins, my horse is comfortable with just different things that move and make a noise. If there's any raging tree huggers, this kangaroo died of natural causes, okay? So there's no problem there. I think he died of rubber poisoning, actually. But right now I'm just desensitizing the horse, making sure that he stands there and relaxes, okay? Usually I use the tail of the kangaroo, okay? It's funny, everybody thinks kangaroos in America are cute and cuddly. You won't be saying that next time you're riding in Australia and a kangaroo jumps out in front of you in the long grass and your horse has a heart attack and bucks you off. They're not so cute and cuddly at that point. Now at this point, I think she's flexing good enough with the halter and lead rope, but I'm going to actually start flexing her with the bridle now as well. So I'm just tying the reins up to the saddle there to so that I can just reach down there and slide my hand down and start flexing her there. I use split reins in this particular event. Normally I ride with a McCarty a lot, but I'm using split reins in this particular event because I wanted to do a reasonable amount of groundwork with the bridle on, and I wanted to be able to pull on each rein independently of the horse's face. So I thought it would just be easier to use split reins for me. I do a lot of riding with the McCartys, and I recommend most people do, but in this particular event I just wanted to use split reins, because I'm going to use a dressage whip to help the horse go forward so that I can keep two hands on the reins and steer her as well as keep her feet going. The one thing in this competition that I really didn't like, but it's just part of the rules, is you're not allowed to have anybody help you ride them. And one of the safest ways of starting a Colts is what Gordon McKinley showed me about being in a round pen. And he was the one, I used to ride over Colts, but he was the one that made them move around the round pen. And I always had confidence that it doesn't matter what horse I was riding, if I were a little bronky or hawky, that if he was in the round pen, I knew things were going to go well because he had enough experience. Because what you do is, when you've got somebody experienced in a round pen, if that colt goes to buck or run forward, they'll step out in front of that colt with that bag and shake that bag and get that colt to stop, or at least get that colt to stop and change directions rather than keep bucking. So that's one. I've started hundreds of horses that way and never had hardly any of them buck whatsoever. When you start them by yourself, you can certainly get the job done, but I think it's a lot more unsafe and it's much harder to get those colts' feet moving. See, when you get on a horse for the first time, they don't know why you're up there. So when you get up there for the first time, if you're having to get up there and get them used to that, plus get their feet moving, plus getting them to steer, that's a lot for them to think about. Pretty much when I get on a colt for the first time, if I'm doing it my method, I just want to get them used to me being up there. I'm kind of like a passenger. It's the person on the ground that's got the control. So since I've taught the horse how to flex with the halter, it's not that difficult to get her to flex with the bit. Now, you notice that she's not chewing on the bit a lot anymore. That's because I've already been letting her wear that bridle long enough now that she's starting to become familiar with it. If I just would have stuck that bridle on right now and started flexing her, it would have been real ugly because she would have not been used to the bridle, she would have been defensive about it, and she would have wanted to fight me a lot more. That's why before you ever teach a horse to yield with certain equipment, especially a colt, let them desensitize themselves to it and let them get used to it there. Now this is her worst way. See how she's just really just leaning on that rein there and pulling against me? Okay, just wait till they soften up and then release it. Start the chainsaw up pretty soon. Start the chainsaw up. See her kind of breathing, huffing and puffing there still. I'm constantly keeping an eye on that because I don't want her to get too hot and tired because she'll stop learning for starters and then she'll get pissy and start shutting down on me. My biggest fear in this particular event is getting the wrong horse, and in some ways she kind of is the wrong horse. The wrong horse is a kind of a lazier type horse that has the heart the size of a pea because they've got no try in them, okay? If I had to pick between a hot, nervous horse that was frightened and a horse that's kind of lazier like her, I'd take the hot, frightened one in a heartbeat. You know, Craig Cameron and I both had horses that were very similar, kind of lazy, pushy, and very disrespectful, and we both kind of had trouble getting their feet moving. Van Hages had a horse that was a lot more frightened and a lot more athletic, okay? Personally, a lot of people thought that he had the most difficult horse of the event. Personally, I think I would have liked that, and I would have thought it would have been the one that I would have wanted to work with, because to me, I'd take a choice of a horse between that one that's a little fat and lazy and disrespectful and one that's athletic but nervous and spooky. I'd take the nervous, spooky one any day of the week because that horse had a lot of gas in his tank. Van's horse had a lot of energy. Okay, all you have to do is channel that energy in the right direction, getting those feet to move forwards, backwards, left and right, and you're in good shape. So, it's just different people do different things with different horses, and I would prefer to have a horse with more life in it, and I'm sure, at the time he would prefer a horse that had a little bit less life. But ideally, I'd rather a horse that's a little bit more hot and nervous than one that's real fat and lazy in a competition like this, because it is somewhat of a stamina event, and you've got to have a horse with a little bit of staying power. See how she's standing there much better now? The whole point of doing the desensitizing after you sensitize him is that she's already kind of tired and sweaty. She wants to stand still. She's looking for a rest right now. I'm going to show her every time I try and scare her, she'll get to have a rest. So what do you think starts to happen? Those horses look forward to you desensitizing them because they have a rest. My program is very, very structured. Down on the horsemanship is very much step by step by step. If you follow the steps and you follow the recipe, you will succeed. If you don't follow the steps and don't follow the recipe, the chances are you're not going to end up with what I'm ending up. It's just that simple. So I really like how she's accepting this a lot better here. The leaf blower, she was actually more frightened of the leaf blower than what she was the chainsaw. So she's standing there much better and blowing it up between the legs there. Okay, she's really starting to come around and get a lot quieter with this. I like that anytime they'll cock that hind leg like that. Notice I've kind of keep her head tipped towards me a little bit. I keep harping on that because it's so important in starting these colts. Got the guns. So we're about an hour and 30 minutes into this event so far, and we've got half an hour left, but I've still got some homework I've got to do before I want to get on just yet. People think that the quicker you get on, the more success you're going to have. That's not necessarily the truth. Both years that I've competed in this, I've been the last person to get on, and I've won it both years in a row. So that should tell you something straight away. The first year that I competed in it, Kurt Pate and Josh Lyons both were on their horses long before I was. I only had less than 15 minutes before I had the 2 hours was up. But by me having my homework done, when I got on that horse that first year, I already had everything done for me. I just had to walk, trot, and canter, get her feet moving, and I was in good shape. This particular event, I did the same thing. I was the last to get on as well, but I felt like I've done my preparation. But the only difference with this year's event is this filly was a lot stickier in her feet, and she kind of was very resentful about going forward. If I could have had somebody in the round pen with me to chase her around, I would have had a lot more success on that first ride, because I wouldn't have been the one spanking her to make a move. Somebody on the ground would have been, and it would have been much easier to get her to move. Righto. So I'm just trying to get her to move away from me a little bit here again, get those feet to move. See how she's getting sticky on me here? She's wanting to buck a little bit again. She's wanting to come towards me. You got to be careful that they don't buck on top of you here, eh? See how I'm letting the string out here? See those feet? That often happens with a colt. That's what happens here. When you let those colts rest, often when you move them again, that's what they do. They want to buck, and that's why I'm getting her to move again, because I'm still not convinced that she's got that buck out of that saddle out of her just yet. That's why when I saddle them, and I like to turn them, I don't like to keep them in the round pen all day because they just don't move around a lot. I love to put them in a big arena so that they stand still for an hour or two and sleep, and then they'll walk around and then buck, and then they'll stand still and then they'll gallop and buck. And they might do that 7 or 8 times a day, but by the end of the day, they just think like that saddle just was a part of their body. You know, if horses were born with a little teeny saddle in the middle of their back, horses would never buck with a saddle because they'd be used to it, okay? I'm just trying to pull her off balance here. When I throw my elbow up like that, it's because she's just pushing in towards me. She's not getting away from me. Move those feet now. You can see she's kind of pushy there, isn't she, you know? And, you know, she'll try and kick at me at different times and push on me and try and get me to move. Just like she's the dominant mare in the pasture, she wants to be the dominant mare between me and her's relationship as well. Give him some room to drift. If I was at home right now, what I would probably do is take the halter and lead rope off for her now and just do more round penning where I could let her be free, which would help her feet move out a little bit better even. See how she's not wanting to yield that hip there? It stepped across. Move that front end now. Move that front end. Now you might say, well, Clinton, you know, you're really having to get kind of firm with this horse. You know, my horse wouldn't ever let you do that. Well, that's good. I don't want to have to do it. But if you've got a, you know, if I had a very sensitive horse, I'd just shake the stick in the air and that would be all it takes to make him move. Every horse is an individual. Some people are very sensitive and some people are very lazy. Okay, so it's very important that you start gently, but do what you have to do to get the job done. See how I had to whack her 2 times then before she finally moved away. I don't like a butt being that close to me. That way if she go to kick at me, she's the bigger chance she's going to get to me. So I want to get away, like right there. See that there? I could feel that coming. That's why I was whacking on her there, trying to get her to move away from me more. See, most people would have missed that. They would have gone around there and let her get closer and closer until she kicked them in the belly. I could see that was coming 2 circles before it came. That's why I'm getting after her here and saying, get those feet moving. Come on, get away from me. See how I'm running with her? I'm letting her kind of follow the round pen a little bit there. Because it's harder for her to go around when I'm pulling on that lead rope as much. So that's why I kind of ran with her to try and help her free up those feet. Right about now, I'm not feeling real good about it because I know she's pushy, I know she's dominant, and I know that I'm running out of time and air, and that's not a good situation to be in. I know I've got a rider here soon, but I don't really want to get on her until I've got her feet moving out better. But, you know, you do what you have to do to get the job done. So I'm in this position, so I just make the best of it as best I can. Notice that I'm doing up the girth again. Usually I do the girth up 3 times. I do it up when I first put it on, just do it up kind of snug. Then I'll do it up a little bit tighter a couple minutes later. And then I usually do it up a 3rd time just before I get on. And I want to do that girth up pretty darn tight there, okay? This saddle's sitting up a little higher on her because she doesn't have a lot of withers, and that saddle pad's probably a little bit too thick for this particular mare, and it's a brand new saddle, so everything kind of sits up a little higher. See how I'm flexing again? I'm making sure that she'll soften to that. Now I'm coming back, flapping those stirrups again, so I'm getting closer to wanting to ride her, so I'm just double checking my desensitizing. I like to do a lot of rubbing under their belly, get them used to that. Because, you know, if my legs accidentally go down around a flank there or bump into a flank or belly, I don't want her to jump out from underneath me and dump me. It's funny, you know, Gordon told me a lot of things I remember. And one of the biggest things he said, Clinton, the more times you pick yourself up out of the ground, off the ground, the better your groundwork gets. And what he meant by that is every time you get bucked off a colt, you'll know that you didn't prepare the horse in one particular area or maybe in more than one area in the beginning. So that's why I do a lot of this stuff, because I've been bucked off enough colts in my life to know where their touchy spots are, where you need to make sure you prepare them. So now, while I'm letting her get her breath back, I'm coming back and working on her legs here a little bit here. I'm just kind of holding it up, and as soon as she stops struggling, I'll try and drop it. But I don't want to drop it, if I can, until she stops struggling. Like right there, she stopped struggling for a split second, and I retreat her. Notice I always come back and rub. Now, when I want to pick the horse's foot up, I actually squeeze their chestnut there with my fingers, and that makes them a little uncomfortable when they take their weight off it. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to pull their weight off that leg all the time. See how I'm squeezing it? When she picks it up, now I, start rubbing her here, Anytime the horse wants to struggle and move their leg, go with them. Don't make them feel like you're trying to stop them. But even if they pull it out of your hand, just try and pick it up again quickly and hold it there. But here's the deal. I'm going to try and drop her leg If I think she's going to jerk a leg away in 5 seconds, I'm going to drop it in 3 seconds. So I always want to be the one that retreats. Even if I didn't really want to do it right then, I'd rather me retreat and drop it on the ground than her pull it away from me. Okay? So now I'm working on a back leg here. So you can still see she's kind of huffing and puffing here, so I've got to give her more of a chance to get her air back. Now when I want to pick the back leg up, I squeeze that hock like that, okay? I had a lot more trouble picking up this filly's hind leg. See how she's leaning in towards me there? Okay, that's where I squeeze that hock and ask them to pick their weight up off it. Now, usually I find that if you'll just leave the legs away for the first week and don't really handle them, maybe rub them down and desensitize them, but don't try and pick them up. Usually when you do go to pick them up, it's pretty easy. See how I'm just hanging onto it there and I try and release it right at a split second when I feel like she's not pushing or fighting, I release it. Sometimes right when you release, they might try and start doing it again, so your timing's a little bit off, and that's what it was right there. So I hold it up here, and when I feel her relax it, I just drop it, just like that. I don't try and place it on the ground, I drop it. I like to drop it a lot because that keeps the horse balancing themselves. When you hold a horse up, if you've got a horse that's leaning on you when you pick their foot up, jump out from underneath it and let them fall down on the ground a couple of times, and they'll soon learn to keep their weight on their other legs. So I don't like to place it down, I like to drop it, and I find that helps them stay a lot more balanced. They don't lean on me as much because they don't know when I'm going to drop it. So now I'm going to start rubbing that leg there a little bit. Okay. Squeeze. And some of her resistance there towards her legs, I got more resistant than the other hind leg, is just coming from that lack of respect there. Okay. I feel pretty confident with her here that I'm not really holding onto the rope here. I'm taking a little bit of a chance, but I feel confident enough that everything's all right on this particular leg anyway. And she's kind of standing there getting her air back anyway. You can't rub them too much. And as she gets better, you slowly take the leg further and further out behind them like that. And when I feel her relax, if I think she's going to jerk her foot away in 5 seconds, I drop it in 3. Pick it up, rub, 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 rub. See when she jerks the leg back, I don't try and stop her, I just kind of go with her. Anytime you go with them when they're struggling, it makes them feel less trapped and claustrophobic, and they'll usually stop it, okay? Now I'm starting to walk behind her a lot more, and I'm just trying to build her confidence that I can be around her without any problem here. I'm getting ready for my freestyle, so I want to make sure, because the freestyle is my chance to prove to the judges, or, I suppose a lack of a better word, show off to the judges how quiet my horse is, how broke she is, how confident I am in her. Okay? Well, I've got to start building some of that confidence in her now. I can't wait to the end of the event and say, man, I hope she stands there. Okay? It might look like I take risk, but I really don't. I always prepare for what I'm going to do. See how she's thinking about laying down there? I just hold it, and when she relaxes, drop it. Okay? That's it. I squeeze that and wait until she picks it up. I highly recommend, if you enjoy starting young horses and you enjoy starting unbroke horses or green horses, get my Starting Under Saddle DVD series, because it goes for 11 hours. We deal with a wild Mustang that's never been touched. And you might say, well, Clinton, I don't have a wild Mustang, so why should I need that? The reason why we used a wild Mustang as opposed to a quiet domesticated colt is that with a wild Mustang or wild Brumby in Australia, you can't cheat with them. You can't take any shortcuts. You have to do it properly. You just can't force them to behave or force them to get quiet. Where, you could use somebody's backyard colt that's been in their backyard for 2 years, and it's like a walking poodle. It just walks around with nothing to do and all day to do it in. It's like a bad smell. It just hangs around all the time. That's why most people start colts and don't get killed, because they're dealing with backyard pets that have been hanging around since birth, and most of them are too stupid to figure out anything to be dangerous anyway. So that's why we used a wild colt, is to make sure that when we showed people this, they weren't worried. We didn't skip any steps. I didn't want to show anybody something that could get them potentially hurt. So I wanted to make sure that they understood the steps and why it was happening. So you'll see on this side, she's kind of kicking out at me. I usually don't worry about this. The reason why I'm not really spanking her or getting after her is because she's just kind of being defensive about it. Because she doesn't want me to touch it there, okay? Normally what I would do right now if I was at home is, instead of me trying to pick it up, I would just go back and start rubbing it more and desensitizing it a little bit more, okay? And then I'd try and pick it up in a couple of days from now. She's only kind of kicking because of a little bit of lack of respect, and she doesn't want me to pick it up off the ground. So for me to go and whack her and get after her, she's just going to get more defensive about it, etc., okay? So I just try and follow her. Again, if I don't pick up a feat, or at least attempt to, I'm going to get a 0 score with the judges. So this is something that, I I wouldn't normally be doing it at home, but I am going to do it here. So just keep following her. See, I've got a head tip towards me? That's another great example. If I wouldn't have had a head tip towards me, there might have been a much better chance of her kicking me in the shin or kicking me in the face, okay? There. Now, that was the first time she stood still for just a split second there, and I tried to drop it there. Wait. Just try and hold it there until she stands still and then retreat it. There we go. There's the little starting point right there. Wasn't great, but it's a little starting point. Right now, I'm not even thinking about taking this foot out the back. If I can just get her to stand still and not try and kick me. There. Retreat. Notice how I find that small starting point there again. Wasn't a lot off the. I didn't lift it a lot off the ground, did I? But it's better than her kicking my head off. Isn't it interesting how different horses react to different things on each side of their brain? You know, whatever you do on the left side, make sure you do on the right side and vice versa. And she handled it pretty good on her right side, but now on this left side, she's not doing as good. So again, I've got about 15 minutes now before I run out of time. So I'm not going to work on this forever. I've worked on it for a point, but at this point, I got to get ready to get on because otherwise I'm going to run out of time. The other two guys are already on their horses, riding them around. And I haven't even got on. So right at this point, I'm down to the wire. I need to start thinking about getting on.
Sorry, mate. Right. Give me the dressage whip. Dressage whip. Dressage whip. Right there on the ground. Right there on the ground. That'll do. Either one. Thanks.
So I'm just moving this bale of hay out of the road here so that when I get my horse moving around, then it's one less thing she has to worry about stumbling and falling over. The reason why I'm using a dressage whip is to help get her feet moving. Now, I'm just practicing a little bit of backing up here because I have to back the horse up on the saddle. So notice how I'm picking up on both reins, asking her with the bit, towing her with the whip. Asking her with the bit, towing her with the whip. Until eventually, when I just ask her with the bit, she'll take a couple of steps back here. This is not necessarily exactly how I would teach it if I was at home, but in this particular situation, this is the quickest and easiest way to get started. Basically, I'm asking her with the bit, which is steady pressure, and then I'm adding driving pressure or pulsating pressure with the whip. Two types of pressure, remember, steady pressure and driving pressure. You need to make sure your horse will yield from both. So both of the other two guys are already on their horses here and moving them around. Just before I get on here, I want to double check that I can yield her hindquarters because if she goes to bucking, I'm not a very good buck jump rider, so I better make sure that I can get her to disengage her hindquarters, otherwise I'm going to get bucked off. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just double checking that when I pick that rein up like that towards her hip, will she move that hindquarters across? Okay, and it also helps get her to bend a little bit more.